A few weeks into the quarantine earlier this year, I found that I missed many things. And one of the things that I missed was to-go coffee. So a friend and I started to go to the only coffee shop in my neighborhood that had managed to stay open during this time. And they had cleverly reconfigured their business to sell coffee out their front door. So I was surprised about a month ago when I heard that this coffee shop would be closing its doors. And I'm sure this narrative is somewhat familiar to you. It seems near every day I read about a shop or a restaurant closing, a business going bust. In normal times, the rate of SME insolvencies is about 4%. The IMF estimated earlier this year that in 2020 alone, that number will triple. And this is only the beginning. The COVID-19 crisis is likely to be one like no other. And there are several reasons for this. First, because going into the crisis, the levels of corporate debt were already at unprecedented levels. Second, because this crisis is directly affecting the real economy. And lastly, because there is just so much uncertainty. When will we go back to work? When will consumers resume normal behavior? Mass business failures have a negative feedback loop that reverberates throughout the economy. For example, if a business fails, it is no longer able to pay its rent. And the landlord then may no longer be able to repay its debt that it owes to the bank. And then the bank may no longer be able to give fresh financing to a business that may need new money. So these negative feedback loops continue. An effective insolvency system plays a crucial role in stopping these negative feedback loops by allowing companies that have a future chance of success to restructure their financials and their operations so that they can regain profitability going forward. But an insolvency system can only perform those essential functions if they are not so overwhelmed with cases that they cannot dedicate needed attention to those businesses that can be saved. So it is imperative for policymakers to flatten the curve of insolvency filings so that the filings coming into the system match the capacity of the court systems to deal with them. But flattening the curve will take swift action and tough choices. To illustrate this problem, I am going to show you charts that demonstrate yearly annual insolvency filings in 3 past crisis cases. This is Korea during the Asian financial crisis. This is the United States during the global financial crisis. And this is Spain in the Euro area crisis. What do these 3 cases have in common? You will see that in each country, the annual insolvency filings track the severity and also the evolution of the crisis, which differ dramatically in each country. What each case has in common, however, is at the onset of the crisis, there is a steep rise in annual insolvency filings above the norm. And it is this increase above court capacity, which is calibrated to normal times, that overwhelms the system. We can think of bankruptcy courts to an insolvency system like we think of emergency rooms in hospitals. Their attention should only be dedicated to those companies that need complex analysis and urgent attention, those that need judicial intervention and analysis. However, if courts are overwhelmed with cases, and this is a real example, they cannot dedicate their attention to the businesses that need it most. Research has shown, for example, that when courts suffer from a steep increase in cases, they tend to do 2 things. First, judges tend to dismiss filings of small and medium-sized enterprises, and they tend to dedicate their attention to larger companies and prolong those restructurings, even if those companies ultimately will not survive. A steep rise in filings also prolongates the time that it takes companies to restructure. Ernest Hemingway once quipped that bankruptcy happens gradually and then suddenly. When a business starts experiencing distress, the downward spiral is increasingly rapid, and there is only a short window of time that a business can be restructured. So how do we flatten the curve? First, Countries can take steps now to increase the capacity of the court system. For example, they could start building more courts or hiring more judges. But insolvency judges cannot just be improvised. And in many cases, the time that it takes to build the human capital and bring judges on board will be too long. Second, countries can start investing now in technological improvements. For example, video hearings or electronic filings. They can also invest in increasing support staff to help judges process cases. But if capacity building is not enough, countries can also take steps to supplement the in-court capacity. And they can do this through creating a system of out-of-court restructuring measures for specific types of companies with specific types of problems, and then triaging them into the solution that makes the most sense for them. For example, companies that might need a light restructuring of financial debts owed to banks. They can be corralled into an out-of-court restructuring framework. This out-of-court restructuring framework could include carrots and sticks to help debtors and creditors reach a deal, and even allowing a court to quickly approve restructuring plans that have been reached out of court. For small and medium-sized enterprises, standardized solutions could be developed. Small and medium-sized enterprises have relatively simple business models, and the widespread debt distress is likely. Therefore, standardized restructuring solutions, such that, for example, the level of business debt is written down to the going concern value of the firm, could be used and have been used in past crises. For businesses that are large, strategic, or socially important, the government can continue to provide solvency support or even additional financial support to help them restructure. It is only the remaining cases, those that need judicial attention and analysis, that would be directed into the court system. So let's demonstrate how the system of triage flattens the curve. If we look at the capacity of courts in normal times, represented by the blue, and then we look at the increase in cases that is likely to occur, we can see how triage works. So for example, for those businesses that need only a light financial restructuring of debt, they can be directed towards out-of-court solutions. For those small and medium-sized enterprises that have relatively simple business models, they can benefit from standardized solutions. And lastly, larger strategically important companies can benefit from solvency support. So what we are left with is the capacity of a court to actually deal with the increase in cases. So you will see, for example, in this case, I have reflected that countries have already increased the capacity of their court system beyond normal levels. So to conclude, the COVID-19 crisis is likely to be one like no other. And an insolvency system is crucial to stopping the negative feedback loop that can occur with mass business distress. But an insolvency system can only perform this essential functions if the court cases coming into the system match the capacity of the courts to deal with them. So to deal with this increase in filings, countries will need to take measures to flatten the curve, both by increasing the capacity of the court system and by supplementing the court system with out-of-court measures. And if countries do those two things, our coffee shop may have a chance at survival.